Title: Inside the Violent World of U.S. Prison Gangs, Real Cases, Real Power. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. The story begins. The origins of America's most dangerous prison gangs. The real history behind the violence. For decades, the American prison system has been home to some of the most powerful and dangerous gangs in the world. Groups that began not with a desire for dominance, but out of desperation, racial tension, survival, and the harsh reality of life behind bars. To understand the violent world of U.S. prison gangs, you first have to understand how they formed. These organizations weren't created overnight. They grew from broken institutions, overcrowded cell blocks, and environments where inmates believed the only way to stay alive was to unite under a banner of loyalty. The earliest and one of the most feared prison gangs in American history is the Aryan Brotherhood, formed in the mid-1960s inside California's San Quentin State Prison. Originally created as a white supremacist group offering protection to white inmates during a period of intense racial violence, the Brotherhood soon shifted from mere survival to becoming a tightly organized criminal syndicate. By the late 1970s, the FBI reported the group was involved in murder-for-hire operations, drug trafficking, and extortion both inside and outside prison walls. Their motto, "Blood in, blood out," became one of the most infamous rules in the U.S. prison system. But the Aryan Brotherhood wasn't alone for long. In the 1950s and 1960s, Latino inmates in California prisons began forming structures of their own in response to rising violence and institutional segregation. From these early alliances emerged LAIM, also known as the Mexican Mafia, one of the most powerful Latino prison gangs ever documented. While the name Mafia suggests outside connections, LAIM began within the walls of the dual vocational institution in California. Its purpose was simple: protect Latino inmates and control criminal activity inside the system. But soon, its influence extended far beyond the prison yard. Federal prosecutors have connected LAIM to street gangs, narcotics distribution networks, and violent internal discipline that shaped the criminal landscape of Southern California. As LAIM's power grew, another Latino gang rose to challenge them. Nuestra Familia, formed in the 1960s at Soledad Prison. Unlike LAIM, which was driven by Southern California culture, Nuestra Familia represented Northern California Latino inmates. Their rivalry became one of the deadliest in the history of American corrections. Over the decades, dozens of murders both inside and outside prison walls have been linked to the conflict between these two groups. A rivalry so intense that correctional officers routinely separate Northern and Southern gang members across entire facilities. But racial and regional divisions didn't stop there. In the 1960s and 1970s, black inmates in California and federal prisons formed the Black Guerrilla Family, BGF, originally inspired by the civil rights movement and radical political ideology. Founded by George Jackson inside San Quentin, the BGF blended political identity with strict military-like organization. Federal reports describe the group as one of the most disciplined prison gangs in the country, known for its secrecy, loyalty, and long-running opposition to white extremist groups. Farther east and south, other gangs took root, many linked to the explosive rise of street gang culture during the 1980s. In Illinois, the Gangster Disciples and Vice Lords brought their street power into state prisons. In New York, the Latin Kings spread from city neighborhoods into federal facilities. In Texas, Tango Blast, Barrio Azteca, and the Texas Syndicate created networks built on regional identity as much as criminal enterprise. Together, these groups transformed American prisons into a complex ecosystem of alliances, wars, and invisible borders. And as correctional systems expanded during the war on drugs and mass incarceration era, the gangs expanded with them. Today, the FBI, DEA, and state corrections departments all agree on one thing: prison gangs are not just prison gangs anymore. They are nationwide criminal organizations with communication channels, leadership hierarchies, street-level soldiers, and the power to influence daily life both behind bars and on the outside. The story of how these gangs formed is rooted in real history: racial conflict, overcrowding, lack of protection, and the brutal environment of American prisons. But the story of what they became, that's even more dangerous. Inside the power, violence, and daily control of U.S. prison gangs. How they rule the yard, the streets, and the system. If Chapter 1 explained how America's most dangerous prison gangs were born, Chapter 2 explains how they operate, how they maintain power, enforce discipline, and run criminal networks from inside some of the most secure facilities in the United States. And to understand this world, you must understand something most people never believe. Prison gangs run more than the prison. They run people, neighborhoods, and entire criminal markets outside the walls. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, prison gangs are responsible for the majority of organized violence inside state prisons, and a significant amount of drug trafficking and homicides outside them. Their power comes from a mix of fear, hierarchy, and a rule system so strict that one wrong move can cost someone their life. One of the best documented examples is the Mexican Mafia, LAIM. Federal investigations revealed that even while incarcerated, key members controlled drug sales, street gang alliances, and extortion operations across Southern California. Wiretaps from a 2013 FBI case showed members ordering hits from their cells, giving instructions to street gangs, and collecting taxes from drug dealers operating in neighborhoods they didn't even live in anymore. The message was clear: imprisonment does not stop influence. It concentrates it. Inside, that influence shows up in the smallest details of daily life. In many California prisons, the yard is divided along strict racial and gang lines. A wrong step, sitting on the wrong bench, using the wrong shower, walking into a rival section, can trigger violence instantly. Correctional officers confirm that inmates often won't eat, shower, or even exercise unless the gang's shot caller on the yard approves it. How decisions are made depends heavily on the gang structure. For example, the Aryan Brotherhood, AB. The AB operates through a council-like leadership, the Commission, and even after years of federal crackdowns, its rules remain lethal. AB members have ordered stabbings for unpaid drug debts as small as $50. Their reach is so dangerous that in 2002, the federal government indicted dozens of members in a massive RICO case connecting them to more than 30 murders, including killings ordered from solitary confinement. La Nuestra Familia, NF. Nuestra Familia structure is military-like, with generals, captains, and soldiers. The gang's constitution was even found during a police raid, documenting strict discipline, rules, and punishments. A former high-ranking member testified that a simple act of disrespect could lead to execution approved by leadership hundreds of miles away. Black Guerrilla Family, BGF. BGF maintains ideological discipline more than racial lines. Though smaller in numbers, they are known for meticulous organization. DOJ reports show the group uses coded messages, legal mail, and outside operatives to communicate. The FBI once uncovered a plot involving BGF members coordinating a large-scale attack on correctional officers. Texas Syndicate and Barrio Azteca. These Texas-based gangs have major influence along the U.S. Mexico border. Barrio Azteca is one of the most violent prison cartel hybrids ever recorded. In 2010, federal prosecutors linked the gang to the massacre of U.S. consulate workers in Juarez, a hit ordered by members serving time in Texas prisons. This level of structure allows gangs to enforce discipline with brutal efficiency. Inside prisons in California, Texas, and federal facilities, a single order sent through a kite, a smuggled note, or whispered through the bars can set off a riot, a stabbing, or a coordinated attack that sends multiple officers to the hospital. Surveillance footage in several states has captured moments where dozens of inmates simultaneously attack, often with weapons crafted from metal scraps, bed frames, or sharpened toothbrushes. For all their violence, however, prison gangs also maintain cohesion through something more complex: protection and identity. For new inmates, many gang alliances begin with a simple choice: who will protect you? In overcrowded, under-resourced prisons, where officers cannot respond fast enough to prevent attacks or assaults, inmates often feel forced into gangs because saying no is more dangerous than saying yes. Even inmates who never committed violent crimes on the outside can be absorbed into deadly organizations on the inside simply because they needed protection on their first day. And once someone is in, getting out is nearly impossible. In many gangs, blood in, blood out is a literal rule, meaning the only exit is death. A well-publicized example occurred in 2015 when an Aryan Brotherhood defector was murdered in a federal facility after attempting to leave the group. In Texas, the Syndicate carried out killings ordered against members who requested to resign. The violence is targeted, planned, and nearly impossible to avoid. Today, prison gangs remain one of the most influential criminal forces in America. They have the power to ignite riots, control drug markets, and maintain networks that extend from cell block phones to entire neighborhoods. Their influence does not end when the prison gates close. It begins there. Murders, power struggles, and America's silent war against prison gangs. Real cases, real victims, real consequences. The truth is harsh. U.S. prison gangs are responsible for some of the most brutal killings ever documented behind bars, and the victims are not always members, They can be rivals, dropouts, witnesses, or simply people standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. One of the most infamous cases comes from the U.S. Penitentiary in Marion, Illinois, where two members of the Aryan Brotherhood murdered two correctional officers, Merle Klutz and Robert Hoffman, in coordinated attacks just hours apart in 1983. Federal investigators later determined the murders were planned as retaliation against officers who disciplined gang leaders. Those killings led directly to the creation of the modern Supermax prison model and the eventual construction of ADX Florence, built to isolate America's most dangerous inmates. But Marion was not an isolated incident. In 1997 at USP Lewisburg in Pennsylvania, a Nuestra Familia member stabbed a rival inmate more than 50 times in a gang-ordered execution. The murder was so violent that investigators found makeshift metal blades hidden throughout the cell block, indicating multiple inmates assisted in planning the attack. The killing was ordered because the victim refused to follow gang rules, breaking a cardinal law inside most prison gangs: obedience. Another real case occurred in 2005, when the Mexican Mafia ordered the execution of a dropout inside Pelican Bay State Prison. The inmate, who had cooperated with investigators, was stabbed repeatedly in the exercise yard. Surveillance footage showed a group of inmates positioning themselves to block correctional officers' view while the attack unfolded. The hit was approved by leadership through a coded letter passed between cells, a single sentence ordering what they called regulation, or discipline through death. A 2019 Texas indictment revealed something even more disturbing. The Texas Mexican Mafia, La Im of Texas, the Tango Blast groups, and the Texas Syndicate were all responsible for murders both inside and outside prisons, including coordinated attacks on rivals in Houston and San Antonio. Many killings were orchestrated by inmates using smuggled cell phones, devices the DOJ says are the most dangerous contraband in American prisons, because they allow inmates to direct hits hundreds of miles away. And perhaps the most chilling example comes from the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, ABT. In 2012, federal prosecutors exposed a massive criminal conspiracy involving murder-for-hire operations, kidnappings, home invasions, and extortion, all ordered by gang generals serving long sentences. One victim, a man who failed to repay a drug debt, was tortured and murdered by ABT soldiers under instruction from leaders in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. The case was so severe it led to one of the largest RICO prosecutions in U.S. history. Even prison systems built for high security have struggled. In 2017, a riot erupted at the James T. Vaughn Correctional Center in Delaware, involving members influenced by gang ideology. Officers were taken hostage and one, Lieutenant Stephen Floyd, was killed. The attackers claimed they were protesting poor conditions, but investigators uncovered strong gang influence in the planning. Inside corruption and control. Gang power extends far beyond inmate-on-inmate violence. In several documented cases, correctional officers themselves have been compromised. In Baltimore, a massive FBI operation spanning years revealed that the Black Guerrilla Family infiltrated the Baltimore City Detention Center, turning it into a gang-run operation. Multiple officers were arrested, accused of smuggling drugs, phones, and even helping BGF members maintain control over the jail's internal politics. One officer became pregnant by a BGF leader, twice. Another openly wore tattoos signifying loyalty to the organization. Federal authorities called the situation a prison within a prison, where the gang, not the staff, dictated daily operations. How gangs maintain fear. A consistent pattern appears across nearly every major gang. Control through fear, reputation, and enforcement. A 2020 DOJ study found that for many inmates, the moment they enter a prison yard, their fate is tied to a gang whether they want it or not. Refusal to join one gang often makes a person vulnerable to rivals, and attempting to leave is even more dangerous. One example. In 2019, a former MS-13 member serving time in the federal system requested to leave the gang. Days later, he was found murdered in his cell, his body showing signs of a coordinated attack. Investigators concluded it was an execution ordered by MS-13 leaders inside Hazleton Federal Correctional Institution. Similarly, in California, dozens of inmates labeled as dropouts have been assaulted or killed in Level 4 facilities, even after requesting protective custody. The stigma of leaving, combined with the importance gangs place on loyalty, makes exit almost impossible without severe consequences. The federal response. The United States has poured millions into combating prison gang operations. Supermax institutions, RICO indictments, special housing units, gang intelligence divisions, and cell phone jamming technologies have all been introduced to weaken gang communication. But gang power remains resilient. Why? Because the root of prison gang influence is tied to overcrowding, understaffing, violence, and racial tensions, conditions that remain present in many U.S. prisons today. As long as those conditions exist, gangs will continue to thrive. As long as fear overrides protection, inmates will continue to join them. And as long as prisons struggle to maintain order, gangs will continue to fill the vacuum of power. The final reality. America's prison gangs are more than criminal groups. They are shadow governments that dictate behavior, enforce rules, and shape the very environment around them. Their power is real. Their violence is real. And the lives lost, inside and outside the walls, are undeniable evidence of a system under siege from within.